We follow a black family who moves to Compton since Henry, the father, got a really good paying job. However, they've been terrorized by the jobless-ass neighbors as soon as they moved in. Part 1 is in the description, but you don't need to watch it for this one to make sense. On the third day, Lucky has another nightmare of a wrinkly bitch stealing a black baby. She proceeds to do the chores and is hanging the laundry when she sees a boy being disrespectful AF. The boy picks up a stick, threatening to hit her. So Lucky grabs the stick from him and chases him out of her property and back to his house. Many people see Lucky chasing the boy until he reaches his mother and clings to her for help. Lucky drops the stick and walks back home. The boy lucky his ass didn't get a whooping. Betty gives her the Karen stare. Boo, take a motherfucking picture. She calls Henry's cousin, Hazel, and says she'll come over to visit before she loses it. Henry is shopping for a television as a gift for his wife. As he looks around, he sees someone on TV dancing with black paint on his face. He stares at the screen, feeling like the person is looking straight at him. Ruby gets him to snap out of it. The big back seller makes snide remarks about Henry having 100 cousins. To throw it back in his face, Henry gives the big back man a tip and says he can use it to buy ice cream. Meanwhile, George spends time with Betty, just like they usually do. George is a fine-looking milkman, so let's hope he's not a racist. Betty and George carefully walks the line between flirting with the milkman and reminding herself she's married. But we all know Betty wants her udders milked by George. Lucky immediately feels welcomed when she gets off at the bus stop, and even more so when she arrives at Hazel's house. It's all smiles, hugs, kisses, and catching up. Meanwhile, the neighborhood's housewives gather to talk about the Emorys, with Betty convincing them they should do something about Lucky. She reminds them that she wielded a gun yesterday and chased a boy with a stick that morning. To Betty's disappointment, some of the wives think that Midge probably made the right decision to move to Anaheim. The other women don't look too excited about harassing Lucky, but also they're willing to follow that white devil. We also see that Betty gets triggered whenever someone mentions she doesn't have children. She assures the other wives that Clark has prepared a presentation for the meeting to tackle their problem. They take a break from their conversation when they see their husbands approach Henry, who is currently fixing the antenna on the roof. Marty throws a can at Henry, and Henry tells his daughter to get inside. They confront him about Lucky scaring off a boy earlier that morning. Clark tries to get the others to stop, suggesting they can talk about this during the meeting, but no one pays attention to him. Henry soon loses his patience and threatens to go down and deal with them one by one. The pasty men comment that he has the strength of an ape. The husbands soon realize that Henry is not going to back down, and they are also worried that he's strong enough to handle the three of them. One guy says, and I quote, to keep that mammy away from his kid. So they end the conversation and walk away without getting what they came for. Meanwhile, Hazel has dinner with the family. One of them mentions how a black family had moved to Compton only to be harassed. Afterwards, Hazel does Lucky's hair. Hazel mentions Lucky's son, Chester, not knowing he's gone. Lucky can't tell the family about what happened with the boy, and she soon finds herself disoriented. She quickly leaves the party, waving them goodbye without giving an explanation. Before the meeting starts, Betty keeps looking back, expecting her husband, Clark, to show up as he promised. But the people soon get tired of waiting, and Marty decides it's up to him to start. Marty says they don't have to use violence to get them out of their neighborhood, but instead they will pressure them until they can no longer take it, slow and steady. Betty is not pleased and asks permission to speak to the crowd. She insists that slow and steady will not work and encourages them to face the problem head on. She reminds everyone that their fathers worked hard to build the land, so they should see their existence not as a gift but as a birthright. It's giving Israel. She mentions a different neighborhood that campaigned so hard the black family decided to leave within 1 week. As she finishes her speech, everyone agrees to rally behind her. There are other passengers on the bus when Lucky gets in. However, she soon sees the man wearing the black hat in the front row, with no one else but the two of them. Not knowing how she's left all alone on the bus, Lucky starts making her way out when the man disappears. But she's dragged from behind by hands on her body. She screams for help, but she's fighting a battle with something she can't see. At the back of the bus, Lucky remains helpless as the man in the black hat watches her. She suddenly opens her eyes with the bus driver calling her attention. Then she hears him say he'll call the police. Sergeant Bull drives Lucky back to her house and warns her that she shouldn't do anything that could get her in trouble. He's convinced that things have driven Lucky crazy and offers sympathy. He assures her he has looked thoroughly and didn't find anyone else on the bus. Sergeant Bull tells Lucky she needs to make everyone feel safe in order to fit in with the neighborhood. Nah, fam, That went out the window long ago when they done killed the family dog. Henry is worried about Lucky when she arrives. Lucky explains everything that happened to her and begs Henry to say he believes her, that there is inherent evil here. But Henry can't get himself to say it. Wanting to make it up to his wife after missing the meeting, Clark grabs gasoline and pours it on the Emory's lawn, burning it to read a racial slur big enough for everyone to see. On the 6th day, Henry sees their lawn and front porch trashed. Black dolls hang with nooses, and a jack-in-a-box painted in black sits on the front door to welcome him. He goes back inside and prepares his daughters for school, walking them to the car. When Lucky sees what was done to her house, she almost walks to Betty's, but Henry stops her. Henry assures her that he's also furious, but if they use violence to deal with it, they will end up in prison, and the girls will be taken from them. Henry tells Lucky that he will drive the girls to school and then go to work afterward, and that Lucky should lock herself inside. When Lucky sees Betty looking, she confronts her and asks why they did what they did when there were children inside the house. Betty is unfazed, and she tells Lucky that they shouldn't have moved to a place where they are unwanted. The other housewives watch as the two talk, and Lucky assures them everything is okay. Betty is taken aback when Lucky reminds her that she doesn't have children of her own, but she tries to keep her composure. Yeah, get that hoe where it hurts. Stay-at-home housewife with nothing better to do. Henry is in the elevator when a colleague walks in with his boss. His boss admits that Henry is not invited to the party, saying it will only bore him. So instead, he tells Henry to enjoy his half-day's work and promises to invite him next time. It's okay, Henry, we know that party is unseasoned anyway. Meanwhile, Lucky visits the realtor's office, asking her to resell the house to someone else. But the realtor assures her that she's not the only person of color experiencing such difficulty, naming the Johnsons who live in the area. She says the family was also pestered when she placed them in Compton. When George delivers milk again, he tells Betty that her speech at the meeting kept him awake that night. Betty appreciates his words, especially as she has never heard Clark support her like George. She admits that she can't wait to go on a vacation where she doesn't have to make a single decision. As she talks, George just stares at her. Later, he tells her not to hesitate to ask if there is anything she needs from him. He's a 10, but he's a racist. That's a motherfucking negative 1,000. Ruby has to eat lunch alone at school because no one wants to sit beside her. She only smiles when Doris shows up and asks her to follow her. Hand in hand, they run away from the cafeteria. Doris takes her to spy on 2 other students who are making out and then run out of the room when they get caught. Doris unbuttons Ruby's shirt and puts lipstick on her while showering her with compliments.
When the janitor opens the door, Ruby walks out alone. Is Doris so white she a ghost? Just a figment of Ruby's imagination. Lucky visits Mrs. Johnson and gets comfortable quickly because she's easy to talk to. However, the pleasant conversation turns grim when Mrs. Johnson mentions the man in the black hat. She says that when her neighbors start pressuring them to leave, she can't sleep or even eat. She mentions the dirty tricks they had to endure, such as nails up the driveway. Mrs. Johnson says she has scrubbed the house clean instead of focusing on what is happening outside. She said she was trying to get as clean as white as snow, then laughs maniacally. Then when the house was cleaned, it was time for her to clean her boys. Lucky realizes that Mrs. Johnson may have killed her own boys. When she looks for the Johnson boys, Mr. Johnson appears in a wheelchair, bloody, with 2 missing legs. Lucky follows Mrs. Johnson to the kitchen, only to find blood all over the room and what appears to be the 2 brothers cooking in the oven. Horrified, Lucky runs out of the house as fast as she can. Hell to the gnaw, I would have been out of there faster than Kamala Harris announcing her run for presidency. Despite the boss telling him to take half of the day off, Henry decides to attend the party where it is announced that their company has received the Pentagon contract. Henry can't believe it when they say all the engineers will get a percentage of the profit. Then a man with black paint on his face gets on the stage and starts dancing. Henry rubs his eyes as he can't believe what he is seeing. Then the guy suddenly disappears, and only the musicians are left on stage. Henry's boss is surprised to find him at the party, so he reveals that he didn't tell his immediate superior that his new engineer is black. But Henry takes his shot and introduces himself to Mr. Stewart, mentioning that he also served in the Army. Mr. Stewart compliments Henry and is pleased to have him working with them as an engineer. Betty visits her parents, asking for a loan so they can move to a new home. It's been years since her last visit, and her mother is not happy that she's back. Her mom clocks her ass, saying she's looking old AF. Her father, Otto, agrees to loan her some money. He asks his maid, named Consuela, to grab his checkbook. Is that the same one from Family Guy? He starts writing her a check. However, he stops in the middle and asks Betty to stay the night, despite Betty saying her husband is waiting for her. She tries asking her mother to write the check instead, but her mother says she wishes Betty never returned home. Betty goes upstairs to her father's room holding a towel. While Otto removes his clothes in the bathroom, Betty sits on the bed crying. Then she snaps out of it and walks out of the room as fast as she can. Oh, hell to the nah. Now we know why she's evil. Literally the devil's spawn with a father like that. She goes home and lies to Clark about her whereabouts. Clark tells her to take it easy on the spending because he's working hard to provide for her. But Betty is not satisfied that, despite Clark always working overtime, it doesn't seem to reflect on their bank account. How about you get a motherfucking job so you can busy yourself from harassing that poor family? Lucky takes Henry and the girls to the Johnsons' house to show them the bloody kitchen, but there are no traces of blood or the two boys ever being there. Despite that, Henry still offers his wife some comfort. Then when the girls are finally asleep, Lucky starts working on her husband. That man getting lucky tonight. Literally. What did you guys think of this series so far? This is just episode 3 and 4. Should we cover more? Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.